Hey, everybody.
Are you ready, Michelle?
Yes, I am.
All right, 6 o'clock, let's call the special board meeting to order. May I have roll call, please?
Levy,
Here.
Miller,
Present.
Wong,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Jacobs,
Here.
Delgado,
Here.
Larson.
Here.
All members are present virtually.
May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the agenda? See none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Item 2A is public participation in final interviews. We had indicated that we wanted some form of public participation on that January 28th interview round. So Dan Urad, our consultant from WXB, had some ideas about how we could make that work during the time of the pandemic. Dan, do you want to share those ideas and thoughts?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And good evening, everyone. Good to see all of you. The thought I had was to kind of piggyback on what I thought we were already building into the final round of interviews, and that is, in addition to the final round of interviews with the board for the 3 finalists or whatever number you settle on, there would be a community forum. And that community forum would allow members of the community to hear the finalists present themselves. And we would frame up what that precisely looked like, what we would be asking of the candidates to present. But it's an opportunity for them to communicate who they are as a candidate, what they believe in, how they feel about this opportunity. And then it would be an opportunity to have some number of questions asked by the community of the candidates, which, I don't have all the details sorted out, but obviously they would be, and I'd share those with you, how that would work, because to the extent to which those any questions could be submitted either at the beginning of the meeting or in advance of the meeting, that certainly would be a good way to go from my perspective. So it's a presentation, an opportunity to interact and engage in a time-limited way, because what we're going to have, depending on how you feel about the next piece of the engagement, there could be 3 different rotations that each of the candidates would have in the final round of interviews. So one rotation would be with you at the board in your final interview. A second that I just discussed would be a community presentation and a community forum, community members. And a third would be an opportunity very similar, if not the same structure, with staff members of the school district. Any staff member that was interested in learning about the candidates and asking the candidates questions, we would have a third one for staff members. And anyone could join. Obviously, the number of questions that can be posed in, let's just say it's an hour, 15 minutes, it has some limit to it. But the other thing that I would suggest that would be done for both of those forums, if you're in agreement in going that route, is that each participant could complete an input form. Because what you want to be able to benefit from is, what they heard and any input that they have as you deliberate and make your final decisions regarding your superintendent of schools. So they would also have that opportunity for written feedback, and we'll figure out how that will all be done and how that will all be submitted. The way this would operate that night, if you felt that this was an appropriate way to go, is that I would suggest that you would, as a board, go through the interview process without me present. And again, you have to decide if that's something you're comfortable with. And obviously you've got some experience with the interview process and having gone through both stages of it before. I would be in one of the other two forums, and then I would bring in another WSB consultant that evening to manage the second forum. So I would be in one, the other WSB consultant would be in the other, and we would make sure that you were provided that feedback from those that made the decision to attend and participate. So that was the idea I had. And just so you know, it's contrasted to perhaps a staff interview group. The one problem in kind of thinking that through with out loud with Kyle when we had a brief discussion about it is, you're limiting the number of staff members that could be involved in that. And so there wouldn't be a limit on the number of staff members that would want to attend the staff forum. But again, you can't do an interview at the same time. So that was a suggestion that I would ask you to consider for community participation in the final round.
Vice President Miller?
Thank you. That was a great explanation, Mr. Merritt. I just had a quick question. I know that scheduling is very difficult, so probably this isn't a thing, but I was wondering, because I've taken part in an interview like that where you've described it, where there's like a community forum and then like a staff forum and then the actual interview before. And I wonder is there a way that we could do like a 2-day thing where like on one day it's like the community and the staff stuff, so there'd be more time to kind of sparse that out. That way we could see the feedback. Would it be, like in your experience, would we want to see that feedback ahead of time? Or is that something where like we'd want to interview, kind of come to our own impressions and then look at the feedback afterwards? I guess I just need a little more information on what why is there.
Yeah, it's arguable either way. I mean, and obviously you have to manage your calendars if there's a second evening, but there's strengths and weaknesses to each of the approaches. And if we, the benefit is you would be hearing the candidates directly if you participated in the forums. You obviously want to be able to, and again, I don't know your culture all that well, but you want people to speak their piece or ask their questions without wondering how other people are feeling about it. And sometimes that can be the case, but it may not at all be the case, for your school district and community. So, I mean, it can be done both ways. It does have a calendar impact with what you suggested, and that should be carefully weighed as well. But I'm not going to say that one way is, absolutely the only way it can be done.
I want to piggyback off that too, because we sent out that doodle for additional dates, and we were having a hard time finding dates where we were all available to meet, because obviously we would have to get that feedback from the staff members and community members. And so if we did it all like on the 28th, we are having a hard time finding time to come together then to do that data. So actually, Megan's suggestion of maybe doing the community and teachers maybe prior to us, so we have time to view that feedback, and then that would still allow us to deliberate that night on the 28th if we wanted to. And I'm saying that because then we're looking ahead, we sent out looking for dates available after the 28th, and we're having a hard time finding it. So that's something to keep in mind too. Board Member Levy.
Just wanted to clarify, Dan, we kind of talked about review the information. Will these sessions that the board is not participating in, so the community and the staff, will this be recorded? And if yes, if there is an issue about someone not feeling free to answer a question, I'm not exactly sure how it works in Google Meet when you're recording, but if you're in Zoom, then either yourself or the representative, someone could submit a question to you privately, and then you could ask the question without sharing their name.
Right.
So one, will it be recorded, and are you certain of the platform so they can have that anonymous question asking?
Well, no, I'm not 100% certain of the which format we would use. We've been using your format for all of these, and we can have a discussion about using Zoom if that's the preferred route. WSB has 2 Zoom platforms, and the sooner, if we were ending up using one of those, which I'm quite familiar with how those operate and function, the sooner I can get those scheduled because, there's a lot of different people that are reserving those, but we would have that option. And yes, we do want those questions to be asked anonymously. And the other thing is, I do want, and the other consultant wants, an opportunity to review them ahead of time. And I don't mean that it would have to be ahead of time in an unusual way. But there are certain things that, that we need to be careful of from a legal point of view in terms of what's being asked. And the other thing is that while there's never a problem at all with an inquiry about challenges that the district's facing, we have to be careful that we don't turn these into a kind of thing that, by its very nature becomes the wrong type of questions. And so, yes, it is to be able to allow for confidentiality. I certainly agree with that, and I support that. But we also have to look at it from a point of view of, we want to be able to have good questions asked, but we don't want to put the candidates in a very difficult spot as they're thinking about your school district.
No, I completely understand that. And really quick, is it possible to have legal with you to kind of filter through the questions? And the reason I ask that is that I don't want someone who didn't have time or whatever to submit a question beforehand to feel like that their participation was now limited if they wanted to join that evening and then couldn't ask a question.
Well, and again, we have to think through the details, and I'm not uncomfortable with the questions being asked that night, as long as, there's a quick opportunity for the 2 consultants to review them. From a legal point of view, I don't think it calls for legal counsel to be there, because really the filter on those have to do really more with, you can't ask personal questions of the candidates in terms of, their personal family background and things like that. And so that's the main screen there. Obviously we would look to make sure that there wasn't anything that was, being asked that would create any, at all issues relative to bias. I'm not concerned about that at all, because those types of questions in your community about, cultural competence and things like that have to be asked. And so I don't think it's needed in terms of that type of filter. And I think we can find a way to get questions live that night, and just so they're looked at very quickly, through those 2 screens. One is that legal screen quickly, and the other one is that, not putting the candidates in a very difficult spot just by the nature of the type of questions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dan, Zoom worked really well last time with the forums because it was really hands-off. The people could sign up, register their email, the confirmation link, and it was very easy for the district on our end. It was really kind of hands-off once the people came to the website and signed up and registered for it. So I think putting it out there in that similar fashion for people to be able to participate. So I think from a platform standpoint, Zoom would look like the way to go again.
Yeah, I like that, and I agree with that, and I have a little bit of bias because that's the one that I'm using, very, very frequently. So
Okay.
as with the other consultants. So if we can settle on what that date is, and we have settled on it, but it may be open for discussion tonight, then I can look at reserving those as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Delgado?
How will the participants be selected, like the staff and community members? Is it open for everyone to attend, whoever wants to attend, or will there be like a limit or some type of selection?
I wasn't looking at any limit other than the limit is of time, because what we're going to create is, if we go this route, we're going to create a schedule for each of those final candidates. They're going to have 3 rotations at night, or whenever it starts in terms of the time on the clock. But now so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to carefully facilitate to make sure that we get their questions, but we also have to let them know that this is the limit of time that we do have. And when I'm talking about the presentation from the candidate, I'm talking about 3 to 5 minutes at the most. I mean, this isn't a lengthy presentation. And so the majority of the time is to focus on the questions. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And I thought we would do it similarly, where we do press releases to the newspapers in Beloit. We would, Monica would put on the website where people can come to the website and register. And then it would also go out on Blackboard to all of our families that way also. So similar to the way we put out that sign up and push out the focus groups.
Mm-hmm.
So then we wouldn't have to, like, I don't want anyone to feel like we didn't choose them or they weren't selected or good enough. I want to put it out there, and then if they're interested, come to us.
Yeah, I support that route. I mean, you're, as much as this is about finding your superintendent, it's also, building and reinforcing the right kind of culture too. So Good for you.
Board Member Wong?
Yeah, Dan, what about, if you're going to have a time limit on this, how are you going to select the questions? I mean, if there's, if there's 20 questions that come in, obviously the candidates are not going to be able to answer all 20 questions.
Right.
Is there going to be a selection process for that?
Well, the process is going to be, especially if you want people to be able to ask them, live on, and submit them confidentially, it's going to be really, working off my feed as well as the other consultants, feed. When we've done this before, there's been a good number of times where there's been a lot of similarity in questions. So, quickly I'd look at, can things be combined in terms of getting at the theme that's being asked about? But it's really, we'll use the maximum amount of time. I think what we do is if there are numbers and numbers of questions, that we, limit the response time to like a minute for each of the, finalists. So they're not taking, 25 minutes to answer one question. And I know there's pluses and minuses with that too, but there's certain things that we can do to combine. And then also I have to be very clear to the participants that a decision was made to err on the side of giving everyone the opportunity to participate, but we do have limited time tonight, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. That would be my goal, and I think there's certain ways we can manage that facilitation.
And to piggyback off that, are the same questions going to be asked of all 3 candidates or the finalists?
That was not my thinking, because they're coming from the participants. And so, that is another way to do it, though. I don't think that there's strengths and not strengths, but if you want to give everybody a chance after they've heard the candidates, as they're listening to the candidates, to submit questions, from my perspective, they can be different, but if you prefer them to be the same, that can be managed as well.
Because we could put online too, they could submit questions online and we would have those ahead of time. Certainly, I think we did that for the interim search, didn't we? Where we solicited questions from the public ahead of time, and we could have kind of like a bank of questions for those forums ahead of time. And then maybe those could be more uniform, but then things that may be prompted by by the presentation or something could be a little bit different.
The combination is what it's that idea. I mean, how do you feel about that idea?
I'll just chime in. I like having it be organic and come from the audience that evening. So that's my preference.
I will chime in too. I agree with that. I was thinking it would be nice to have it just be like what Board Member Levy described. What I'm wondering is if we do want, maybe this is overcomplicating it, but I'm wondering if we could have people submit questions ahead of time. We could give candidates the option, but not the obligation, because like if they get like 400 questions or something, to respond to those questions in writing and make them public for people. Like I'm wondering, like I'm almost envisioning like almost like a little, like we could put something on our webpage and click to see like candidate forum questions submitted ahead of time, and give people a very like just a defined, like you can submit a question from this date to this date, and then like they can answer as many or as few or whatever, and then it would be posted on there. So like let's say I can't make it to the forum, but I want to submit a question, and then like my question might be like 25 other people's questions, and then those other people can kind of see the answer and just kind of gauge a little bit, but that might be like doing too much. So that was the only other thought that occurred to me in terms of publicizing it. But yeah, I do agree that it's probably more authentic, and honestly probably going to give the candidate a better opportunity to be, you know, sort of more authentic if they can just answer questions as they come, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other thoughts? Is the board kind of in agreement that, and I know Board Member Jacobs, you're next in queue after we kind of handle this, but it's okay if questions are just asked during those forums?
Right, but I had a question about that, Kyle.
Oh, go ahead.
So Dan, first of all, it's legal, right? That different candidates are asked different things by the public?
Well, I mean, sure, it's legal. I mean, you can't ask illegal questions at any point in time, but yes, it certainly is legal. Where you get the commonality is in the third group with you.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's where you'll get the commonality. But part of it is, especially if you want to, you know, give some organic questions and organic responses, it may be, you know, you know, it's not only the content, but you're also looking at how these people think on their feet as well. And so, I mean, there's a lot of benefit from that, you know, ask them live and have the person respond live. So I always have to preface legal questions with the fact that I'm not an attorney, but I don't see a legal problem with that.
I just asked because, of course, we have to be very careful when the board is interviewing to ask the same questions of each candidate.
And I absolutely agree with that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the questions will kind of be organic and come from the presentation. Board Member Jacobs, you're next on the queue as far as a question for Dan.
Oh, I already was. You just answered mine.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think it was Megan and Amy.
Yep. Vice President Miller.
My question's been answered. Thank you.
Fantastic. Board Member Levy.
All right. Just one quick point to why I also think the questions should be organic and live, because I know we have had an issue in recent past where people have come to town halls and they submitted questions, and then unbeknownst to them in the moment, canned questions were being replaced with their questions and asked. So I think it's really important to further support my previous point that it's organic, it's from the audience, and Dan and whoever else is coming from WASB, thank you in advance for kind of clearing those to make sure they're appropriate and then handing them off to the candidate.
Sure.
All right, so it looks like if the board wanted to do those on a separate night instead of the 28th, it looks like Monday would be the best day to do it because that's our business board meeting week. So it would be Monday the 25th. So then if you're able to get the feedback from participants, that would give us not a whole lot of time, but depending on how many we select to interview in that first round, that we might be able to still deliberate on the 28th after doing our file interviews then? Does the 26th work as far as asking candidates to do the 25th and the 28th?
Kyle, would you mind repeating that? So if the forums weren't the same night as the board interview, you were looking at the 25th of January?
Yeah, Monday the 25th.
Okay. I have to, and this hopefully is not an issue, but I just want to make sure you hear me say it. I know of who I asked to join me that night was Louise Blankenheim,
Mm-hmm.
and she had joined you previously for one of your goal setting sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And she's available on the 28th. I don't know about the 25th. In fact, if that's what you prefer, I may take a second and just text her while we're doing this, just to make sure that that's okay. But I don't know yet if that's what you want to do as a board.
Board, is that what you would like? Maybe do it on the 25th. Have that community and the staff member input forums on the 25th, and then the final interview with us on the 28th.
What time on the 28th would that be?
I wouldn't be able to start until 6:15.
That'd work for me.
Well, let me look at what that could look like. 6:15. So if it was 6:15, how are you with setting aside an hour and 15 minutes for that interview?
It might be. What's the earliest anyone could start during that time? I could maybe start a little bit closer to 5:30. If we have two, it would be doable. It depends on how many we're bringing, really. If we're bringing two to that final interview, 6:15 would be doable with an hour and 15. But if we're doing three, then it's getting after 9 before we're done. And if we're hoping to have deliberation that night, then that just gets late.
Not to muddy the waters, but if you just don't mind me, and we can certainly work with whenever you want to. I can work whenever you want to have the final deliberation. But on the original calendar, you were doing the final round on the 28th with final selection on the 4th, and that's if you wanted to, that in particular, if you want to do anything in terms of outreach to the other district, if it involves another district, you need to build some time in there and to be able to have that. So just want to remind you that that's how that was originally structured.
Okay.
For me, I'll do whatever you if you want to do the deliberations that night, but that would preclude that opportunity.
No. Yeah, as long as if we're able to do it on, we have that time set on the 4th of February, I think that should be sufficient. I think that would let it sink in and let Ray mull it over, and then even give more time to review the information from the forums and the background check and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Board Member Delgado.
I think Board Member Levy was before me. Or did you get your question answered?
Was that old, Board Member Levy?
No, I was saying you were fine. Thank you. Just quick clarification. Well, actually, just expressing a preference. One, I think we should build in space for 3 final interviews, and then if it ends up being 2, yay, we can celebrate. But if it is 3, we have that time. And I am not in favor of deliberating after potentially 3 rounds of interviews. I just want time to let it soak in, go over our notes, and then make sure that we're looking at candidates with fresh eyes. So that's just my preference.
And I'll piggyback up on that. My question was, what was the thought of, how many finalists were we having for that day. And also, I am not in favor of deliberating the same day. It would be way too exhausting, and I don't think we can make good, sound decisions when we're that exhausted.
My typical recommendation is to build in 3, and then, you can decide as this process works, whether 3 is the right number, or if it's 2, or sometimes boards feel they want to bring back a 4, not often, but I would build it around 3, as Board Member Levy was suggesting.
All right, Vice President Miller.
I was going to say the same thing. I think we should leave room for 3. I can meet as early as you need us to on the 20. Well, not like, I mean, I contract times at 3:30, so like worst case scenario, I start remotely from Whitewater. So like as early as we need to is fine. I also want to, I want to iterate that not only do I agree with waiting the week still, if we could build in time, like I almost feel like what I learned from the process last time is that we need to provide space for initial reactions, and initial reactions / like we took a lot of time to kind of go over like the reference stuff. And then I feel like we need to put some space in between that conversation. So I'm looking at, and now I just lost my calendar. I think maybe like if we did something like a Tuesday, or like even if it's just a day before, but I would prefer if we could do like reference check kind of discussion and reactions, wait a day, and then final deliberation with like a lot of time budgeted. Like I'm going to tell my family I'm not going to see you until like next year. Like we just like really need to give ourselves the time so we can make a careful and deliberate decision.
Michelle, can you maybe do a doodle for that first week then? Like maybe the 1st and the 3rd? And we can find a time on those days?
Are you talking about February 1 or 3?
Yeah, February 1 and 3, yeah. Because then if we are like in final deliberation on the 4th.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And in the calendar, our goal is to complete the background and reference checks by the 21st, with WSB doing the background checks, you doing the reference checks, as you did last time.
Okay, perfect. Board Member Anderson.
I was going to say that I would be in favor of making sure that we have at least time set aside for 3 interviews, and then moving our deliberation to a different day, because let's be honest, after interviews we are all exhausted, and we should let the information that we just took and sink in for a bit.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else on the public participation for the final interviews, or are we ready to go on to the superintendent salary range? Sounds like we're hoping for a public, for those forums to be held on Monday the 25th, a final round of interviews with us on the 28th, and then finding time for the deliberation that following week. Okay. All right. So moving on to the salary range then. Dan, you want to kind of start us off here, please?
If you don't mind giving me like 20 seconds to text Louise.
Oh, sure.
Excuse me, Board President Larson.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, I didn't catch all of those dates. So did you say the 27th and the 28th for the interviews?
No, the 25th. The forums would be held on the 25th. Our final interviews would be the 28th. We wouldn't really have any obligation on Monday the 25th.
Okay, so 25th is...
Yeah, for staff members and public, or staff members and community. And then ours would stay on the 28th, which is the day we have slotted.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question regarding that? So if we're doing final interviews on the 28th, when will are we doing any other interviews prior to that, or we're only choosing 3 candidates from the pool that we got?
No, tonight we're doing a first round of interviews next week. So we are going to pull it down to 6, 7-ish to do interviews next week on, and then after those interviews, we would narrow it down again for those, target of 3 to come back that following week. Or I'm not the following week, but the 25th and the 28th.
Thank you.
So we're not narrowing it down to 3 tonight.
I'm ready on the salary anytime you would like.
Okay. Board Member Jacobs? Do you have something? Is that old?
No, it's new. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay.
So you're saying we're going to do the first round interviews on the 13th? To whittle it down to 3 for the 28th?
Yeah, and we'll get there in a minute. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a minute as far as the dates.
Sure. Oh, the dates, okay, because I was going to ask for a different date. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Dan, go ahead with the superintendent salary range, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to be able to share some things with you just in terms of context, and then I'll share with you possible numbers for your consideration. I don't think a discussion like this should be held separate from ultimately what you're trying to accomplish here. That's the reason for doing the focus groups in the main, is to gain an understanding of what people are looking for in your superintendent. And we've done an extensive write-up that you've been able to use to think about the type of candidates you want. But kind of looking at that, I believe, and who wouldn't want this, regardless of district, but you need to find a quality person. And you need to find, and my goal is to work with you to make that happen. But you also want to be able to find a quality person that has the intention of staying with you for a period of time. I mean, that was a very prominent message in the focus groups, and that is that you don't want to create a situation where even if things are going reasonably well, that a person has a reason to look elsewhere. And one thing I'd ask you to think about as it relates to superintendent positions is, and I don't know how to say it other than this, and that is that the only way to advance a more significant increase in salary is oftentimes to go elsewhere. Because once you set in on a salary, that really is what your raises are built off of. And so will you have a salary that not only will attract quality candidates, but will you have a salary that will hold that candidate, hold that superintendent in your district for a period of time? The third thing I would say, and maybe there are more artful ways of saying this, but your superintendent position job is a big job. And part of that is informed by the experiences that you've had relative to superintendents and the instability in leadership and how people feel about the instability of leadership. It certainly is viewed very consistently as not desirable. And I guess maybe that's a gross understatement, but it just isn't desirable. And the other thing is just, and I don't know how much to put to this, but, you're very close to the Illinois border. And for superintendent candidates that have flexibility, are interested in your area geographically, those superintendent salaries in Illinois can oftentimes be viewed as that much more attractive for candidates because they're oftentimes that much higher, not uniformly, but you also have that to be thinking about in terms of attracting a quality person. I'm not putting tons of weight onto that, but I put a little bit of weight onto that for your consideration. So I just wanted to go through that with you because it's not just finding the superintendent, it's finding the superintendent that's going to meet the needs of your school district and community. People are looking at this person as being a strong community leader, not just the superintendent of schools. But you want to be able to hold this person if we're going to meet the needs of what's been called for. So with that, just in the backdrop. So what did I do to help you identify a potential range? What I provided you were 3 sets of data. One data is superintendents within CESA 2. And I want you to know that I have not referenced that data in developing a range recommendation for your consideration. It's just because there's too many districts and they range from tiny to bigger types of districts. But the other 2 I did reference in trying to construct a proposed salary range for your consideration. And so one of the other sets of data is the athletic conference that you're a part of, which is oftentimes referenced as a comparable in looking at superintendent salaries. It's not always used, but it's oftentimes referenced. And then what I did is I did look at the similar size districts, which was a third set of data that you were provided. But I want you to know that I only looked at a limited number of districts within similar size student population. And why did I do that? I did that because it's a little bit of the same phenomena in CESA 2, with big, little to big. However, I looked at districts that were similar in size to you, but I also looked at those that may have some similar dynamics that you face as a school district. Diversity, urban, small urban kinds of issues. So let me just tell you, and I'll tell you let's go back to the conference schools. Those are Beloit, Janesville, Madison, Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Verona. And then in that similar size districts, the ones that I looked at to also develop a proposal on salary range were Fond du Lac, Howard Suamico, which is a suburban Detroit district, a growing size district, La Crosse, Neenah, Oak Creek, Franklin, which is one district, Stevens Point, Wausau, and West Allis, Milwaukee. They're all with some similar types of issues that you face as the district. I'm not saying they're identical because they're not. And they also have similar student populations. So in referencing, let's first look at the first part of the range. And that I developed off of the similar sized districts, the Fond du Lacs, the La Crosse, Neenah, et cetera. And so what I did was and all the salaries I could look at were 2021 salaries. So kind of put that in your brain as I process through this. And I'm taking a little bit of time because I want you to know the data that I used in developing the proposal. I don't want you to feel that, there may be other data that could have been used, and I don't have an argument with that, but I just want you to know what I did to create a salary range. So if you look at those districts, a median salary for this current school year across those districts is $175,000. If you apply a 2%, and you wouldn't have to, and I don't know if you've identified a salary increase for administrators next year in your district or not, but if you use the 2% to go from 2021 to go from 2021 to 21-22, it moves it to 179. Then in looking at the conference school districts, I need to be very clear about this data because there were only 2 districts that responded to the annual survey that WASB does on superintendent salary. So I want you to know where I came up with the other districts. So who responded to that survey were Beloit and Janesville. So how did I get Madison, Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Verona salary? I got them off of a March 2020 newspaper article in the Madison newspaper about the 2021 salaries for Dane County superintendents. They had an article on all those salaries. So what I did was, that's the data that I used to get to that. And so if you look at a median salary across those 6 districts, Beloit, Janesville, Madison, Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Verona, that median salary is $195,949, $196,000. If you apply a 2% to that, again, you wouldn't have to, but that's just what I did to give you a number. It's $199,900. So one route you could take, because ultimately you don't know who you're going to hire, is to enter this with a salary range idea in mind. And so using those 2 data sets, a recommendation could be 179 to 200. And that is, again, that's adding the 2%. And if you settled at lower numbers and you want to lower a percentage increase, that can be done. So if you didn't apply, if you just looked at this year's salaries alone, the median is 175 on the one data set, similar size districts, and the ones that I mentioned to you, creating a median to 195.9.
All right. Are you ready? Is it okay if we do some questions now?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm
right.
great with that.
Okay. Board Member Wong.
Dan, thanks for that information. It's great to give us an idea of the ranges and what the competition is out there, and also your comments about our district. I had a couple of questions. One, in your view, you had mentioned, or you initially started out by saying, it's a big job. It's our district, and I guess, do you view that as just because it's Beloit, or are you just saying it's a superintendent job and it's a big job because we all know it's the number one position? That's the first question. The second one is, do those salaries include perks, specifically TSA contributions?
Let me answer the second one first. They do not, and I'm prepared to have a separate conversation tonight about some ideas around those. Because again, you got to look at what other superintendents in the area, in the conference, or wherever you want to use, what they're currently have available to them. In terms of your first question, I walk a line a little bit with that one because I am biased by the view that every superintendent job is a big job. But there are aspects of your job that are particularly big around, it's part of your narrative. And I think it was great that you put that into your first essay question that you've asked all the candidates, because it's something that begs addressing, and it's something through quality leadership that can be addressed in terms of the need to heal, the need to build relationships, the need to be a relationship builder, and then come with ideas. And so I'm looking, I guess, to ultimately answer your question, John. I was looking at it as Beloit has very particular issues that make it a big job.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, Board Member Levy.
So you addressed my first question, which did those salaries that you referenced include perks? So thank you for that. How does having a deficit budget play into this discussion, if at all? And if my memory serves me correctly, the projection is that we may be in that same financial position again next year. And then how would you recommend, or would you recommend structuring some sort of clause in the contract that after a 2-year completion that you will have this increase that's outside of the standard pace of living increase that every individual gets in the district? So those are my 2 questions. Okay.
Well, let me deal with them in the order that you raised them. In terms of, just remind me the first one. I had it, but then it just
So we recently just approved a deficit budget.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And we may be in that same position
Yeah.
again next year.
Yeah.
And I completely, I want people to get their money and to feel valued through the monetary compensation. But then we also have to balance that with our fiduciary responsibility and explaining that to our community.
Okay, thank you for reminding me of that. I mean, at the end of the day, you get to decide what you want to factor into your decisions about setting salary. And I come to this tonight with not being cavalier at all about your financial circumstances, but what I weighed very heavily is using data sets to be able to drive the decision, with the need of, you don't want to just hire somebody, you want to hold somebody. And my worry for you is that if you don't have the salary viewed as Beloit's a desirable place to land, my worry for you is it may be that person, and I certainly would never advise a superintendent to leave after 1 year to get more salary, but it could be after 2 years, or it could be after 3 years, and I just don't want you to be in a position where you're in a turnstile any longer. And so, but at the end of the day, you can decide, because it's your budget, not my budget. But I wanted to come to this discussion being data focused, as well as to tell you what's at stake here if it's not set in the right kind of way to attract and to hold people. So I hope that's responsive. And then in terms of the second question that you raised, remind me of that one again.
No problem. How would you recommend, or would you recommend structuring like a 2-year increase that's above cost of living? Like, you've done a great job. We really want to retain you, et cetera.
There's opportunity to look at through superintendent evaluation, the merit pay concept, in terms of growth. But you really should do it as part of that bigger conversation. And my worry for you is if you just set it as, if you stay here 2 years and things go well, you're going to get, I'm making up a percent now, a 6% increase when everyone else is at 2%. I don't know that you want to create internal equity issues after you've hired a superintendent. And so I'm trying to be more erring on the side of what will get you and keep you that superintendent than big bonuses along the way. But if you want to get into that type of discussion, I think it has to be a broader conversation around what constitutes merit compensation for the superintendent of schools. And have it tied to something other than longevity, have it tied to things like student outcomes as one possibility, an enhancer or something like that. It wouldn't have to be that, but I hope that's responsive.
No, it is. And just a really quick point for clarification, if we are very transparent from the start, and because of our budget, I'll say limitations for lack of finding a better word, that this is how we want to structure pay, and it turns into like an if-then statement, could you still foresee, and I'm not asking you to be a fortune teller, but just relying on your experience, that being a point of contention with the rest of the staff? Because we definitely don't want to create that, or that being somehow divisive.
Well, no, I certainly understand that, but in terms of the data that was provided to me, your prior superintendent came in at correct me if this is wrong, but I'm just working off of what was shared with all of us to help me identify the TSA ideas and things like that, came in at a $200,000 salary, and that would be like 2 years ago. And then your superintendent before that, initial hire was in 2015, so what would that be, 6 years ago, at a 158. So you could kind of roll up a 2% increase each year and see where that might get you. But those are all things that it's very appropriate, Board Member Levy, for you to be thinking through that in terms of how the reaction is going to be. And the last thing I want to do is just kind of be a drive-by consultant where I'm just saying, well, here it is. You have to be sensitive to those things. But my encouragement is also be sensitive to what I shared with you at the beginning of, the presentation about the nature of the job and wanting to hold somebody, to not create an incentive to be going to look out for a greater salary increase.
Thank you so much. And just my final point that I'll say is that from what has been shared with me, I think a lot of people in the community felt that $200,000 mark plus perks was a bit excessive.
Yeah. Well, and no argument on my part. I do understand that from a community point of view, but that's where, again, you can be free to use any other data you want, but my encouragement for you is whatever you settle on, you should be able to lean back on whatever data you use to make that judgment. And in terms of those comparable size districts, that 170, what was that, 175, 176 based on this year's salary. I mean, that's the comparable in terms of median salary. And if you look at athletic conference, it's right around 200,000. So, you want to be able to. I'm not saying it's always easy to face criticism, because I would never suggest that. But the more you can lean back on the data that you use to make your judgment, the better.
All right, Board Member Anderson.
So the question I had was, you're giving us that kind of a pay range to kind of start based on districts that are kind of related to us and size and demographic. But like, as I was looking at those, like it says years in current position. So, we're looking at salaries that have already been increased because of them being there for a while. So, are we, should we look at numbers just slightly below because they've already been in that district for a certain period of time? Or are we just trying to match what the other districts are doing right off the bat? Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. The problem is that data set is kind of incomplete. Although I certainly understand the point that you're making. I just don't know just to what extent that should be used as a major criterion in establishing the salary, because if you look at your near neighbor district, if that position was open, which it's obviously not, they're going to set a salary using similar types of comparables, and so I just don't know how much you want to play into the number of years. But again, I'm not suggesting that it be totally ignored either.
All right, thank you.
Board Member Delgado.
Just by hearing all the different discussion, I wish that we would have had comparables that would have been more like starting salary for, new superintendents. I think that the data would have been a lot different than what it is now. As Board Member Anderson mentioned, this is going off of, what's currently being out there without taking into account, how many years they have already been there, how many increases have they gotten, and I'm sure that data changes constantly, but it would have been a good, I think it would have been great for us to be able to see what the starting salaries are for the different districts, not necessarily what they're making currently. But anyhow, that wasn't provided, so we can go back to that. Just a question, have you seen, or is there any type of trend? Because I see that, the positions are being posted without really giving any type of salary range for them. Have you seen a trend where once the range of salary is posted, where people have actually backed off from, from their applications? Because I also didn't notice any type of like salary request on, our applications that we got either, as to what they're currently making in those districts that they're working in.
Yeah, that would be, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That would be typically addressed during the negotiations in terms of what they're currently making, in their district. I've not seen that, but, that's one of the, the advantage of having the salary determined before it's posted is people know what it is up front. But that's not where we were at that point in time. We didn't have that salary known, but I haven't seen, I think with what I shared with you, and again, it's entirely up to you what you want to do with it. I think, I don't foresee that happening in terms of people backing off.
Thank you. Just one comment, and this is for all board members, that I would really like to see this position to be a longevity position where someone actually stays. I think our district is in desperate need of someone that is there, that, that doesn't leave, that, and I would hate that based on a decision that we make off of, a salary range and based on the deficit that we currently have. I think we have a lot of applications that at least I saw there was a huge skill on budgeting and bringing back districts that have been on like a deficit. So I would really like us to focus on really trying to get someone that will stay in the long run, that would stay with us. And if that means that we go a little bit above our range, then I'm willing to take that risk.
Vice President Miller.
Thank you. My original comments were covered by board members Levy and Delgado. I just want to, add in one more perspective on that. I am very much in favor of pay equity being highly valued, and I appreciate your comments about that, Mr. Mayor. I think you're right. This is going to be maybe a more complex discussion, but I have thought it through, and I really do want us to put in some kind of an incentive for longevity. And to the point about other merit issues, it's tricky, right, to think 2 years down the road if things aren't going like optimally. It feels maybe different to be like, oh, by the way, here's a bunch of money, and I understand that might not go well maybe like at the time. Mm-hmm. However, I just have to say that education is a process. All of these factors are process-based, and I would prefer, I think it's been really loud and clear from the community that we need stability. We need somebody who's going to stay here, and there are always going to be obstacles to overcome, but we need to really invest in somebody, and we need them to want to invest in us. So I really want to strongly support that idea of a longevity-based pay scale.
Board Member Jacobs.
I too want someone that wants to stay. That's extremely important to me. I think it's extremely important to the community and to the district. However, I want us to be very careful with money. We have to remember we are having deficit issues. And even though, in my personal opinion, I think past boards have offered excessive pay to superintendents, and I just want us to keep that in mind as well. And I don't want to be disparaging, but look at our situation where we're at today, and we need to keep in mind our community and our staff salary and what the community wants us to pay. And I really, and maybe I'm naive, but I really believe that a person who wants to come here when we do have issues, we do, but we have many strengths. But that being said, I think a person who's going to come here has a heart for these issues and wants to help us improve and grow into the great district I know we can be. And again, maybe I'm naive, but I don't think that person is going to expect $200,000 salary. Those are just my thoughts, but I really think we need to keep in mind we want to bring up our staff salary. when we've got a lot of different financial issues going on. So I really am not for a high salary. Thank you.
And I'm not for necessarily lowballing, because if we look at our budgeting issues are really stemming from open enrollment out. We have Lincoln Academy opening, so we need to. It's like 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. If we try to save some money on the superintendent's salary, we can easily spend it in 2 years on another superintendent search if we don't get it. So either we give the superintendent who we're going to hire now the money, that $12,000, $15,000, or we're going to spend it again in 2 years, and our deficit is going to continue to grow as our open enrollment out continues to exceed the open enrollment in. Board Member Wong.
I would piggyback off that as well. I think that, we have to look long and hard at, what's happened over the course of the last 5 years. And, we've had a declining enrollment. And, my view is that a successful organization to become a successful organization or district, the best way isn't just to cut as much as we possibly can. We need somebody that's going to be able to come in here, provide longevity, create a climate that people want to come here, and staff members, administrators from all parts of the district, and continue to stay here and grow and have that, so that people say, yes, they want to be a part of it instead of what they've experienced over the last 5 years. But I did have one question, Dan, that maybe could be, I'm not sure if it's possible or not, but is it possible at all, or have you seen it, whereby you can develop a vesting schedule for, let's say, the TSAs? Because that could be sort of that little perk side of things, whereby we could say, could you do like a gradual vesting schedule, let's say over 5 years, whereby it goes, 20%, 40, 60, 80, and 100. Is that an option whereby, yes, we offer up maybe this additional perk, but that's sort of the incentive for them to continue to stay here for the longevity side of things?
I think that is clearly something you could do. And those get adjusted along the way oftentimes. I mean, that wasn't my personal experience with having a TSA as a superintendent. And I never asked for an increase of that piece of it, but you will see that be done. So I think that's something to look at too.
I mean, there's many ways to go about doing that. You could do a cliff vesting, whereby you say, we contribute to the TSA, but it could be a 3 years, and you don't get 100% until you're here 3 years, or it could start after year 2 as far as the vesting schedule goes. So we can develop that any way we want to.
That is true. If I could, I just want to make a comment about the concept of a salary range as you think about this. And, everything I've heard, those are all proper perspectives to hold. And there are some differences that you have, but I want you to think about the range as giving you some flexibility as you identify your final candidate. And so the idea of the range was you'd have a possible low end that fit more with less experience, and you would have a higher end if it fit with what that person was currently perhaps making or near making, or would what it would take to get that person to come to Beloit. And so I don't want you to feel that. What I've tried to do in the development of a range was to be able to provide you data on a low end and a high end, but you don't need to decide tonight what that actual salary would be. I think it would be helpful, especially as we now move into the interview process, to know what that range would look like, low to high. And also that, we can have a separate discussion about some of those other forms of compensation as well.
Because those actually come in more like when you're actually offering the position to someone, right? Because that would be a part of the contract.
That would be part of the contract. Yeah, right. That's correct.
So when we're ready to offer the position to someone, the board at that time would then give me kind of all the perks they're willing to offer, and put into that contract and offer. So like an annuity or anything doesn't have to be decided tonight, just kind of having that dollar amount range, but keep those other things back of our minds, in our back pockets to use too. Okay. Board Member Jacobs.
And I just want to reiterate something, and that is we need to be careful. We need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money here. And I'm not saying lowball it. I think the superintendent should get what he or she deserves. However, we do have budget constraints, and it's 7 of us making a decision for the whole community, and I think we really need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Is there anything else on this? I mean, any input, any upcoming decisions from this discussion?
I think you need to establish, whether it's tonight or prior to that final round of interviews, what that range would look like. You don't want, I wouldn't want you to go into having focused on who your candidate is and not know what that compensation would look like, because you want to be able to have that move as quickly as possible at that point in time.
Okay. Board Member Jacobs?
So if we wait, Dan, would it be possible? I really liked Board Member Delgado's comment about beginning rates of superintendents too. If we could have, is it possible to just put something together as far as that goes too, and then not, maybe decide tonight, but give us all time a little, to have that information, and then we can do some more reflection?
I can look for that information. I don't know how available it's going to be, because I'm happy to be wrong that it is available, but that lower range amount, whether it's precisely what I suggested to you or not, was kind of based off of the idea of what would be a less experienced superintendent might be able to make, and you can adjust it up or down any way you want to. But I can certainly look for that information. I just don't want to overbuild expectations that it's out there.
Okay, thank you. And of course, that would be up to the board. Thank you, Dan.
Board Member Levy?
I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but Dan, were you prepared to recommend a range tonight, and then we just kind of play around with it, 150 to 180, or where are we going with this discussion, and what is our expectation to keep us on track? Is the goal to develop a range tonight and then kind of flesh out perks as we go along in the process? What do we need to do to keep us on schedule tonight?
It would be helpful if a range could be identified, but what I don't want you to do is if you don't feel you have all the information that you need to develop that, I don't want that to be artificially created tonight and then have you in a bad situation with what that range was. So I was hopeful that you could establish a range tonight, but if it's dependent on more information, let's try to get that information.
What do you think, Board? Do you need more information, or is somebody able to recommend a range? I heard from Jacobs and Delgado they would maybe like more information. Board Member Miller?
I think I would be comfortable with a range somewhere between 165 and 185.
Board Member Anderson?
I'd be comfortable with that range also.
Any other thoughts?
I would expand it just a little bit because we don't know who we're going to hire. So I would say 160 to 190. And then, we don't have to max out. We don't have to come in the bottom, but it gives us the ability to negotiate.
I would not mind that range, 160 to 190.
I like that range also. I'm sorry. I was trying to talk and I was muted. Any other thoughts on the 160 to 190?
I'm fine with that as well.
I'm not. I prefer 160 to 180, but I can live with 190 because it doesn't necessarily mean that's what we'll end up doing.
I would also like to see a vesting schedule on a TSA contribution.
Okay. Okay. So are you hard opposed to 160 to 190, Board Member Jacobs, or can we walk away with that?
I can live with it if I'm, thinking about this correctly. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to offer.
Yeah.
As high as that. Because I do feel that's stretching it for our district.
And thank you. Vice President Miller, did you, is that new or did I recall?
No, I was just going to say I agreed with the range that Board Member Levy proposed.
Okay, so it sounds like 160, 190 is where we're at. Other perks to be determined along the way and in a part of the negotiation. Okay, anything else? Are we ready to move on to interview questions? All right, interview questions, here we go. Board Secretary, do you want to, is it easy for you to share your screen with the input we received on the questions?
Sorry, I have too many screens going tonight, so my cursor gets lost. Yes, I can try to do that. Let me try.
I can try to share my screen too if somebody kind of helps me with questions and everything, because it makes it more difficult for me to see that.
I'm just trying to see like how many screens it will let me pull up. I think I just have to throw the screen. Hold on one second. I think I just have to throw it over to the screen I'm using to present. So bear with me one second and I'll throw it over here. And then I should be good.
Okay. Dan, how many interview questions should we have? We've done usually like 12 to 13-ish, and then we have that legal question at the end.
You're muted.
That's where you should keep yourself.
Okay.
Crap. No, stop. All right, try that again. Sorry about that.
No problem. Do you want me to throw? I can throw up on mine.
Okay. Otherwise, I may have just figured it out. Yeah, I got it. So
you got it?
When you do it, I can do it.
I can confirm that Louise is available on the 25th.
Okay, thank you. So I'll work with Monica to get that out.
Can I clarify with you, Mr. President, do you want the actual questions or do you want like the tally that I did or do you want?
Yeah, the tally.
The tally? Okay.
Yeah. Of course, this may come as a shocker with 103 questions. There was only like one clear like front runner.
Okay. What is happening here? Well, I have the right form, but now I can't get back to the meeting.
Yeah, I'll just throw up this. If somebody just helps me out and watch for questions. So, question 4 was a one of the top getters with 5 responses. Number 37 had 4. Okay. And then should we go down and pick up there were 6 people who responded. So should we go in and pick up the 3s?
There were 5 that responded.
This one shows 6.
It's,
6 responses.
it does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kyle, sorry to interrupt. Could you repeat the first number, the question number?
Yep, I'm sorry, it was number 5. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's number 5. Thank you. That just bumped down, but I didn't see over here that was hiding some of them. Thank you. Okay, so we have number 5, number 37. And then if we go down, if we look at number 3, was what it is about our school district that you if I click on this, may have to just pull up the full one on
It says, what is there about the school district of Beloit that led you to apply for this position?
Is that one we want to keep in?
Could I, board member or board president Larson, could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could we just go by category and look at them individually and just go down the list and make decisions?
That's fine, whatever will be easier.
Because I think there were 12 areas, if I remember correctly.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 areas.
10 areas.
Yeah.
Oh, then we'd have a couple extras we could throw if we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a separate bank for second interviews too, but if there are any that, we can always save them for the second round. Okay. So, so do we want to use number 3 from the first section because there wasn't a clear front runner in the biographical? So if we use that number 3, what is there about the school district of Beloit that led you to apply for this position? Is that one you want to keep in?
Sure. Is it okay if we just jump in during this portion?
Yeah, I can't
okay.
see anything.
I would say no, because that's kind of in the 3 questions that they answered, and then with the introductory that they submitted, I think that's already covered, and I don't want us to have a wasted question when we may want to pull a few from a different category.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Could we just politely say, hey, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and not really make that a formal question? Because I agree there was so much substance in so many of these other questions, but
yeah.
I also don't want to be rude and be like, hey friends, let's just jump right in. I think just it doesn't feel like a formal question.
I think we usually do that in the beginning where we say, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started with the questions? So nothing from biographical you feel we want to include the question.
That sounds good.
Okay. So we have number 5 in how will you inspire trust and positive working relationships with school personnel in the community? Are there any other ones from school community relations that we want to include? Okay, doesn't sound like it. For vision, we had 3 for number 21. Whoops. Describe your experience with strategic planning. How do you measure success as it relates to the plan? Had 3.
Can you make the screen bigger?
I can't, my tab is as big as it goes. Do I have control over that as the presenter? Or I know that if you're on your Chromebook, I have like zoomed in. I've been able to make on, as somebody who's watching, I've been able to zoom in and make it bigger. Otherwise, the questions are attached on board docs to the bank, and they are numbered.
Yeah, I have the questions printed. I just can't see the numbers on the graphs
Yeah.
that we're looking at, but that's okay.
So we're keeping number 21 in? Is that one, or are there any other ones from Vision we want to include?
Can we put it as a maybe in case we need to cut it later?
Okay.
Board Member Levy, I didn't catch all that. I'm sorry.
No problem. I asked if we could just flag it as a maybe in case we need to cut it later.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else from Vision, either on the definite yes or maybe?
I like number 17. Can we put that as a maybe?
Number 17, how would you ensure that the vision is understood and implemented across the district? Okay. All right. Got it on the maybes. Board superintendent relationship. Are there any questions? Would it be helpful? I mean, since we're not really going off of this data, would it be more helpful if I just put up the questions and share that instead of this?
No, I like seeing the responses.
That's fine.
I was just gonna say, like, I wrote down all the numbers that I like picked and stuff. I mean, are we all okay? I think just leave it up.
Okay. All right. Anything from this section? We have 2 for number 24. How would you assist the board in identifying proper roles and responsibilities in relationship?
That wasn't my pick, but I think that's.
Yeah. Sorry.
I like that one.
Okay. Any other ones from this? Because we only have 200 different ones. Okay.
Could you repeat that number?
That one is number 24.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so moving to operations and finance, we had 3 for number 33, which is what steps would you follow to determine which areas to reduce in the school budget? That's not showing me the whole one. Is that one we want to keep in?
I like it.
Okay. Are there any other ones from operations and finance?
I have 37.
Number 30.
Curriculum.
Yeah, number 37 is curriculum and instruction.
I like number 30 from operations and finance.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So we have 33 and 30 from operations and finance. So if we go down to curriculum and instruction, what was that, Board Member Levy?
37.
37, which is describe how you would ensure the board and community that the curriculum in the school district of Beloit, on the form it's not showing.
Doesn't that one show 4, or am I not reading it correctly?
So number 37.
Yeah, that has 4. I like that.
Yeah. Any other ones from curriculum, instruction, and assessment? Okay. Oh, is there another one?
I have 43.
43. Describe your experiences related to virtual schooling and or distance learning opportunities for students. How do you envision these programs coexisting with the traditional school program?
I like that one as well. I think it's very relevant, not only with the current environment, but what the future is going to hold.
Okay. All right. Anything else for curriculum, instruction, and assessment? All righty. Interpersonal relationships. So Number 57 had 3, describe how you develop and maintain relationships with all employee groups. Is that one we'd like to include?
I like it.
Alrighty. Are there any other ones from interpersonal relationships?
I have 60 that focus on student voice.
Okay. Everybody else okay with 60?
I like that one too.
Okay.
I have 59.
Okay. 59, how do you know that you are being successful in your role as a superintendent? Okay. Is that good with everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else for interpersonal relationships? That brings us up to 9 questions total with 2 in the maybes. All right, heading down to leadership and collaboration. Sorry if I make you sick. To go down on my Chromebook, I have to go one way. To go on my Mac, I have to go another way. So, okay. We have a couple with 2 in this one. Number 62, describe your leadership style. How will you measure its effectiveness in this school district? Number 77 was, how can the school district recruit and retain the best educators possible?
I like both of them.
Okay.
I like that one as well.
77. And then, Maria, you said you like 62. Any other feelings about 62? Okay.
I like 62.
I think with 62 that most of the applicants covered that in their statement.
Okay.
I respectfully disagree, Board Member Levy. Not that they didn't, but I just think it's an important question because their whole leadership style is going to give us a lot of insight into how they'd run, he or she would run the district.
We can put it in the maybe if we have any room left.
All right. So I'm going to add 62 over here.
Good idea.
Okay. So we have 10 right now with 3 in our maybes as we head into human resources and personnel. So we had 3 for number 79. How do you keep the best teachers in your school district? We also had 3 for number 83, which is how to use the educator effectiveness systems, policies, and practices to retain or improve teachers and administrators.
I feel strongly about the former.
Yeah.
Which one?
Go ahead, Megan. I mean, Board Member.
No, that's okay, Board Member Jacobs. No, I said I feel strongly about I think it was 79.
Yeah. Oh, how do you keep the best teachers?
Yep. Because
yeah, I like that.
Teachers.
Yeah, I like that. I think that one's important also. Any other ones from human resources?
Could we combine that one with 77 and get away with making it one question? Because
sure.
Recruiting and retention.
Yeah, Dan, do you think that we would be able to work that in? Combine them?
I do feel you could combine those.
Okay, so I'm going to quick make a note and
Good
69.
idea. Could we still keep then number 83? Because that talks about administrators as well.
Yeah, with the educator effectiveness question.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts about 83?
I like it.
You know, just one other comment, and you can leave it as it is, but the term educator effectiveness in CAPS is a Wisconsin-centric program. Now, other states have very similar programs for, teacher development and principal development. It just begs some clarification if you're sitting in front of a non-Wisconsin person so they understand what you're getting at, and I can help you with that at the time.
Okay, so kind of wordsmith it so we don't necessarily use educator effectiveness as the terminology.
Well, what you could do is you could use it, but just don't put it in caps. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but I think that's fine if you do that.
All right. Okay, then anything else for human resources personnel? Okay, if we move down to equity and diversity, there were 3, 4, make sure it's the right number. Number 91, describe your understanding of diversity and equity and why they are important to this position. Is 91 one that we want to include?
I like it.
I like it.
I think if we go with 95, then they would have to include components of 91.
I'm sorry, could you read 95 one more time?
Yeah, no problem. It says, what does it mean to you to have a commitment to diversity and equity? How have you demonstrated that commitment, and how would you see yourself demonstrating it here? So if you're going to provide how you're demonstrating it, I'm hoping that your definition of it is evident in how you would demonstrate it.
So I agree. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Board President Larson.
Well, no, sorry. I think a lot of the candidates touched on 91 in their questions. I kind of like the 95 to kind of like dig a little bit deeper.
So I'm going to be repetitive. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm so sorry. I was just saying, like, I don't want to be repetitive because I think I said this last time, but I've been on interview committees where people ask, like, for definitions, and that's, like, usually, like, the deal breaker question for me because they, like, can't define it without, like, a really, like, abrasive example. And
Okay.
so I feel like if I'm in favor of doing 95, but remember how last time we kind of, like, edited, we, like, put, like, in parentheses, like, kind of extra stuff in the question. Could we just make sure that whenever they answer the question, we just ask that we make sure that you please include a definition? Because, like, I really feel like that helps gauge kind of where people are at. So sorry to be so aggressive in the conversation.
No problem. So we can, Dan, you think that's still going to be a doable question in like a time set? Because now we're at 12 questions.
I think you're fine.
Okay, so I'm going to put in parentheses kind of include some content from 91. Okay, so that's 12. How do we feel about the 12 we've selected? And
I would just add one more, and then maybe we can prune if we would. I would like to combine 96 and 101. 96 are what are some concerns that you have about working with diverse populations or communities, and then combine that with 101, which is explain your experiences working with diverse students and populations, and then we can kind of add, and what are some of your concerns?
Okay. Are we okay with that, with adding a 13th question?
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead. Board Member Wong.
Just got a question. I mean, on the second question of the application, I mean, we did cover some of this stuff. So, I mean, are we being repetitive with it? Or are we looking to have them dig deeper?
I think the concerns is different from what was addressed, because I could live with getting rid of not combining 101 because that may speak to one of the questions we asked. But if people have concerns or apprehension about working with diverse communities, and that could be benign to malignant, I would like to flesh some of that out, if possible, in the interview.
My only question is, how many questions do we really have? Because we have questions within a question, don't we?
We did last time too, and I feel like the timing was like not terrible.
Yeah, we did. We did.
And then that's up to Dan too to kind of front them and say, you know, there are 14 questions. That last one, number 14, that legal one is usually is usually very quick. But then saying, you know, you have this amount of time, you have 14 questions, so try to be brief. So Dan usually does a little bit of that prep work ahead of time. Help, you know, of course not giving them the questions, but helping them prepare for timing.
Kyle, does that 12 include the maybes?
No, the maybes are out. So if we combine 96 and 101, that gives us 13. And then that legal question, that'd be 14. So that's 2 questions each.
Well, Kyle, can you, because some of those maybes I really kind of liked, can you tell us without the maybes, what we've got under each section?
Okay. So,
Kyle, before you do that, can I go back to the last question that Board Member Levy proposed?
Yeah.
In my experience with interviewing people, we normally don't include like negative questions because that would be, I mean, it's a question that you're asking someone to provide like a negative answer to, which normally doesn't work for, not to say that, you know, authenticity of the person responding to it. I don't know. I guess it kind of gets complicated sometimes with the answers that we get. I mean, I could see why you would want to hear what kind of answers they would provide, you know, but in my experience, normally when I ask a question like that in interviews, they just sit like silent and they don't know what to answer. Or they'll say, no, I don't have any concerns. So would that be even providing any type of, you know, I don't know, insight for us as to where they're at? You know what I'm saying?
Delgado, may I ask you a question about your question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so if we removed diverse students, would you feel it was appropriate to ask a question, let's say, what concerns do you have about our student retention? Or what concerns do you have about our achievement gaps?
I think that that's different because that's based on data, not necessarily based on their own personal concerns, like their own, you know what I'm saying?
I guess I just view it slightly differently because if I'm asking someone, you know, what concerns do you have about working with diverse populations, the answer could be, I don't have a ton of experience, or I don't feel I've been effective at building relationships. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, it's bad, you're a terrible person, but I think that gives us critical insight because we do have a diverse community, and I think that that's something that we need someone who's at least comfortable and able to provide a coherent response to that would be my position.
Okay, and again, you know, the only concern that I have is that we're not really going to get much information from that. Like when we ask the question, you know, what are some of your weaknesses, you know, and that's what I was referring to because that question is very, I don't know, popular. Well, it used to be at least. You know, what are your weaknesses? And I found in the experience that I have doing interviews that I don't get any type of feedback that will provide me any insight, you know, on making a decision. So.
And I guess I would agree with Board Member Delgado and Board Member Levy. I'm hoping that we will know how much. And forgive me if I am not. This isn't part of what you were wanting to glean was how much experience they've had with diversity. We should be able to glean a lot of that from where they've worked already.
It's not so much, I can't, okay, so it's not like a hidden question or a trick question, like what are your concerns? If you have concerns about working with a diverse population, and I don't know what that might be. It might be, that's my jam and I'm so into building up diversity that I may neglect another area or may not focus on. I have no idea what we're going to get. And I will go with the will of the board, but if someone has concerns, I would hope that they would share those, and I think that information would be useful.
I don't know. I struggle with that one because I think that who's going to really come out and say that I have a problem with it? You know, I just don't. I mean, that's going to be a deal breaker. I mean, I don't know. I guess they're going to say. I think a lot of it goes back to because when I was doing the research. As far as where these school districts were, where these people, the applicants were applying from. I mean, you could go in and do research to find out the demographics of where they worked. I don't know. I don't know if somebody's really applying for a job and they want the job, are they going to come out and say that, yes, I got a problem with the diversity? I
hear where you're coming from, but I think it's more nuanced than that. I don't think anyone's going to come out and say, well, I don't like this group of people. Like, I don't think anyone would do that. But if it's more nuanced, like this is a concern, and I don't have much experience, or I have worked in this and it didn't end up well, or I don't think anyone is going to be opposed to any group of people. I am hoping that it will be a more nuanced. If it doesn't stay, that's fine. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Vice President Miller or Board Member Anderson, do you have any thoughts on that?
Member Anderson.
Question 96.
I mean, I think it's not a bad thing just to ask. And I'm torn because like I understand what you're saying. It's hard to answer questions in the negative, and I've been trying to rework ways to rephrase it and still maintain the integrity of the question. But like if I put myself if I were to ask that interview question, I mean, I might ask for clarification about like, are you asking me concerns about me or concerns about the student? That's the thing I'm kind of wrestling with. But I don't know like concerns about like my ability or concerns about like what I think our students need or whatever. But I guess I feel like it's a fair question because like it kind of it forces you sort of to go into the weeds, right? Like, and it really could give us a good in-depth perspective in like how people are thinking about ways that they can approach things that are challenging. Because it is hard to meet a diverse range of needs, and diversity means different things to different people too. And like we're seeing that right now with, the challenges that the pandemic is bringing. So frankly, I think it's a pretty fair question. And it's not that I agree, it's not like a trick question, but as I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone answering it, at least for me, it would sort of force me to get specific and go into detail, which I think would be very insightful.
Okay, I might have a solution. Listen to this. Okay, so number 68, if we modified it, describe a difficult situation you confronted with respect to diversity and outline the steps you took to resolve the situation. I would remove the word problem.
I like that option.
Okay, so can you read that again, please?
Yeah, it's number 68. So it's describe a difficult situation that confronted you, or I would say that you encountered, because I don't know what the situation was, that you encountered with respect to diversity, and outline the steps you took to resolve the situation.
I like that.
Problem.
Okay.
I think we will get a lot more content from their answer with that type of question than the other one. So I like that. Thank you.
Okay.
That is good, Board Member Levy.
All right.
I like that that question too, because like going back to like if you put yourself in those shoes of the person trying answering the question that we proposed beforehand, you may give a very brief answer, and then you may have some people that give a very in-depth answer that goes into the weeds, which we would be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But that new one actually, I think, would work better in that case.
Okay. All right. So I took that note down. So the 13th question then would be that modification for number 68. Describe a difficult situation you encountered with respect to diversity and outline the steps you took to resolve it.
Board Member Larson, could you read the maybe questions that were tossed out, please?
Yep. So the first one I have is number 21. Describe your experience with strategic planning and how do you measure success as it relates to the plan?
May I interrupt again? Do we have anything under vision?
Let me see. Vision is 13 to 21. We have number 13. No. Hang on. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong column. No, we don't.
I personally think we should have one question for vision. I don't know how the rest of my colleagues feel.
What is the number range on vision? I'm sorry.
13 to 21.
I thought we had 17.
I thought we had moved 17. I thought we moved over to the maybe. So my list I have is 13 with 13 is without 17. So I have ones that I thought we wanted yes for sure are number 5, 24, 33, 30, 37, 43, 57, 60, 59, 77 and 79 combined. Number 83, number 95 with incorporating the definition portion from 91. And then the 13th one is number 68, describe a difficult situation, the one we just decided upon. Did I not write something down correctly?
No, can we merge 13 and 17? because I like the fact that 13 talks about work with the school board and the community. So how would you work with the school board and the community to ensure that the vision is understood and implemented across the district?
That's good.
Okay.
And can we take one of the interpersonal relationships, because we have 3 questions there for that section, and so we don't go above, the 13th question. Otherwise, it's going to be a very lengthy interview.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so number 13. Board Secretary, do you have the wording Board Member Levy suggested?
I can repeat if you need.
Yeah, if you want to, just to make sure, but I think I have it.
Okay. Describe how you would work with the school board and community to ensure that the vision is understood and implemented across the district. And I don't know, instead of the vision, if we want to be more specific, like the district's vision, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. And then did someone propose taking one question out? Them?
Yeah, we have 3 under the interpersonal relationships. We have 3 selected. Can we take one of those out?
Sure, we have 57, 60, and 59. So we have describe how you develop and maintain relationships with all employee groups. That's number 50. That's 57. 59 is how do you know that you are being successful in your role as superintendent? And then 60 is, as a superintendent, how do you maintain connection with a student and how do you ensure student voice in your planning? I really like number 60, so I'd like to see that one stay.
I like 57. I would take 59 out, but I don't know how others feel.
No, I agree. I would drop 59.
Okay. Other thoughts about 59? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, so where are we at then with questions now?
Okay, so if we remove 59, then we're at 13, 14 with that legal one, which hardly counts.
And then we do have at least one question from each subcategory then, correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so then the other maybe I had down was number 7. I actually had 2 more. 17. Oops, sorry, I'm getting lost.
79, 13, and 17.
Okay, perfect. And then 62 was the other maybe, which was describe your leadership style. How will you measure its effectiveness in this school district?
I still really would like at least just to have describe your leadership style. I want to see if what they're going to say, what type of leadership they're going to lead with.
Could we kick that off in the kind of informal preamble? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself and your leadership style.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it might get a little wordy if you guys are okay with that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Could I just make one suggestion on that question?
Yeah.
It's to tell us about yourself. A person could go a lot of different ways, and it kind of could border on, well, do they want me to share with you about my family situation?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it gets a little bit better when you tie it with that other question, but I'd rather see, if you're going to leave that in there, tell us about your professional background and your leadership style, or just tell us about your leadership style. I'm just a little concerned that candidates may interpret the first part of that as personal.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your work experience. How did you phrase that?
Tell us about your professional experiences and help us understand your leadership style, or share your leadership style with us.
I like that, and then that should put them at ease, hopefully, with because they're just going to be, saying what their work experience has been, and that won't start them out of the gate, feeling too tense, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Could we drop work experience since we have their resumes? Are we comfortable with tell me a little bit about your leadership style, or is that too fast, too quick?
Well, I think and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought the purpose of that first question is just kind of like a little warm up to get them to feel relaxed.
What do you think, Dan?
I think both points are excellent points. I mean, I think you do generally want to just get them kind of settled in. You could narrow it to just say, share with us your most recent leadership experience. That way they don't have to recite their entire resume.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just hit a nail on the head where we see their most recent on the resume, but some of the people who have been in education for a long time, there may be some beginning stories or that we haven't seen and so if we keep it like tell us about your professional experiences, that may give them the opportunity to kind of go back and kind of highlight things that maybe aren't on the resume.
Sure. No, that's
Can we focus it a little bit so we don't get because if they're nervous, they might rattle off, and that would be horrible. Can we say like your most memorable or your most enriching, or so then they focus it on one experience and then leadership style, and then we're ready to go. Most rewarding.
I like that idea. What does everybody else think?
I like that too, because I mean, you want to. If you leave it too open, they could ramble, which we don't want, and then it allows them to focus in and really kind of take that breath before they start.
Does that sound good with everybody?
So, can you read it one more time, please?
Yeah, so tell us about your most rewarding professional experience and help us understand your leadership style.
I like it.
Got a question. I mean, the second question of the application, I know we talked about, it was talking about cultural competency, but it also, I mean, if you looked at many of them, they describe their leadership styles. Are we being redundant here?
I don't think so, because this is the leader of our district. I mean, your leadership style as an administrator is who you are and how you're going to lead, how you're going to handle yourself. And oh my goodness, God forbid that somebody might give us a different answer than what they wrote down. But I just think it's an extremely important question. It tells who they are and how they'll fit with our district.
And I would say for you, it's part of the idea behind this being a big position in terms of, that you want their voice in terms of how they intend to lead.
That's fine. I'm just bringing it up. Like I said, when I read it all through, I just want to make sure we're not being redundant. I respect that.
Thank you, Board Member Wong.
Okay. All right. Are we good with the questions? My other thought is, are there any questions that you specifically would like to ask? Or is it okay if we just randomly assign them to people?
Random assignment's fine.
Any other thoughts?
I can do the last one if you want, the legal one.
Sure.
What I'm saying. I don't care.
Okay.
Can we get a list of those questions well in advance?
Oh yeah. Yep. We'll get them ready, because then we want to get them to you, because we'll be doing the interviews virtually. So you have to have the paper copies, because we have to. Well, you could do electronic too, but we have to have something to turn in. So we'll type them up, and so we have the opportunity to get them printed and dispersed if necessary.
Can I ask a question about final round interview questions quick?
Final?
Yeah, I know we had a discussion earlier. I was going to bring this up earlier, but then we got off the subject. I'm going to bring it back. So real quick, I really liked that we had community members submit questions. I thought that the best substance came out of those questions. Could we decide now if that's something we want to repeat to some extent? Because, it's getting pretty close to interview time, because if we were going to elicit questions from the community, I'd probably want to post in invite people to submit those questions like this week, so people have plenty of time to think about it and submit. If we don't want to do that, that's fine, because I understand that there is an additional outlet for the community. I was just thinking when Board Member Jacobs was talking about all the different categories and making sure we have something covered for each category. Some of these, I mean, there are a number of categories, and I know we're going to kind of like probably use this as a reference for final interview questions. I'm wondering if we want to maybe even just select like a hand, well, no, I'm not going to even go that far, but like I'm just thinking if we got like a bank of questions from the community, we can kind of maybe slot in like we did last time, their questions into these predetermined categories, right? So I'm not saying we have to do that. I see the value either way, but if we do want to do that, I think we should decide it now so we can post something sooner rather than later.
I agree. I think the community came up with some of the best questions that we asked for final interviews. So I would support doing that and posting it early so we can have that window open as long as possible and still stay on track for our deadline.
Other thoughts?
I would not mind going out either.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind if we do that also.
Okay. All right. I will work on getting it done. I am attaching the sheets, you know, showing how many for each. I'm attaching it to board docs right now because it wasn't completely done yet. So I am attaching it right now. Are we good with interview questions? And we can move on to just tweaking those dates.
Yes.
Okay. So there was one day, was Vice President Miller, was it the 14th? The Thursday?
Yeah, I'm going to have a hard time with Thursdays just because of the pandemic and childcare issues.
Okay. So we sent out the doodle. Board Secretary, was there any time we found that week to use as a second night for interviews?
No. Out of all the dates, there was not one date that all board members were available.
Okay. So, and we have a significant amount of questions, so we're going to
there were a few that had 6.
Okay, what days were those? Can you bring those up? And maybe those were, maybe people just preferred not to, but
if I don't know if we can do this or not, but I know like we can record the Google Meet, and then the board member that was absent for that round of interviews. I mean, because we're going to be just asking the questions and we're evaluating the response. So if a board member can't actually attend that part, could we just be able to send them the recording of like the question asked, and then at least then they can still kind of evaluate it? I don't know if we can or not, but this is an idea.
I mean, I don't think legally there's anything wrong with that because we do that with expulsion hearings. We record it and it's still closed session material. It would just depend on then the board member who wasn't able to attend, like how they would, you know, their feelings about it.
Well, I think that should only be a last resort because I don't know that that's fair to the candidates.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, if you guys, if we don't want to change the date, and that's like on me, I just like have some constraints that day. I'd be curious to hear what the concerns are about the fairness to the candidate, because that's definitely a priority for me. I'd have no problem making the time to watch and, you know, just ask, maybe I could just like, as long as there's a time, I just want to make sure I'm not violating like an open meetings law thing, like where if I had a question or clarification that I want to to run by the board about anything that happened. You know, I just want to make sure, like, right, like that's all. If there's a good process for that, I guess.
And I think he said if you had any questions, it would be fine to ask them during deliberation. But again, I would like to try to hold on to that as a last resort because I think it is important. And, you know, for the candidates, you know, it's an opportunity for them to meet us as well as for us to meet them. So was there one day where there were 6?
Well, we have, it depends. So on Saturday, the first Saturday, which is, I believe, the 16th, I have that Spencer and John are not available at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I have everybody else available a little bit later in the morning or in the afternoon. So if that is definitely an out and a no-go for those two, then that's a done deal. Monday the 11th, I had several people that were not available. Monday the 18th, the same situation, several people not available. So then the next opportunity would be Tuesday the 19th. I had one board member that was not available. Oh, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. On the Saturday, Amy was not available either.
Okay.
So there's 3 missing that day. My apologies.
Okay.
So the closest one we had was Tuesday the 19th, which would be almost a week later. And then after that, I have Saturday the 23rd, which is really far from the first round of interviews. And again, that would be Spencer that's not available.
Is that the weekend of the conference, the convention?
Saturday the 23rd?
Yeah, WASD.
No, WASD, I'm
That
sorry,
was done.
WASD convention is on Wednesday the 20th, Thursday the 21st, and Friday the 22nd.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, for like the Saturdays, it's a maybe. It just depends if I get scheduled for work or not on those Saturdays, because they tend to schedule me either Saturday or Sunday.
Okay.
There were 2 of us, right, on the 18th, Michelle. Were there 2? Was it, or is it just me?
No, there's several that cannot do Mondays.
Oh, okay.
Every
Yeah.
Monday that I had, there's several people that are not available.
Okay, because if it was just me, I would say I would try it, but I just would be looking very strange because my eyes will be dilated.
Yeah.
I see the board member, and I won't be able to read very well.
So
I saw your expression,
Thanks
too,
for
board
sharing.
member Wong.
Okay. It sounds like
I want to see a bug eye though.
No, you really don't.
I mean, really, how does the rest of the board feel if we recorded it and Vice President Miller could watch later?
Dan, how do you feel about that? I just feel like, how are we coming across then as a board, you guys?
I wouldn't over worry about how you're coming across as a board. You know, provide the candidates the explanation that, you know, a board member couldn't be present, but you felt you needed to move forward with the timeline. I don't know I would want you to briefly check with your legal counsel on whether or not is that establishing a record that becomes available. I don't think so, but you don't want to have a problem later on with that. But I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. I mean, it would be great if you could avoid it. I mean, so let me be clear about that because it's important that all 7 be present. But, you know, things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you, Dan. If
there were only, let me just make up, if there are only 4 board members present, I think that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If there's just one, I think you can provide a good explanation.
So then we're talking the 14th, right? I just like to point out we're all going to be, that's a long haul for all of us because we start, a lot of us start on the 12th at 4 o'clock, and I'm assuming we're going to go to around 10, and then we've got 5 to 9 and 5 to 9 the next 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice if we could have a break in between, but not a whole week.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. Yeah, I think a week is too far to have the 2 run. You know, a day or 2 is fine, but you don't be that far disconnected usually.
And the one other dilemma, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters, but just to put it in the room, is that, you know, minimally you want to be able to do the background checks and reference calls on your final 3 candidates, you know, in that, somewhere in that timeline, you know, before the final round. I think that was your position last time, if I'm recalling correctly. So, you know, the more you move, you know, down the road, that'll compromise that perhaps.
Because then the other tricky part with that Thursday is that's the second night. So I don't think we have another night between another meeting scheduled to deliberate who we're bringing for the final round. Is that correct? I mean, is it? Oh.
Yeah, typically that's done the second night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but Megan, you said you could still weigh in on that part?
Well, I guess not then.
Yeah, that's my concern then is then, you know, it's one thing to watch interviews, you know.
Right.
Okay, this is a little crazy. Do we have a date earlier that we can do our first round? Like, I think the 11th was out. I'm not a fan of, like, weekend, but maybe the 9th or the 10th was their availability, and then have the 13th be our second night so we can deliberate?
I could do the 9th.
I can do the 9th.
I can do the 9th.
But please understand, and we'll get to that, you know, as part of the selection of the candidates, I've got to make sure that there are 3 candidates available for that 9th, given that we're on the 6th. And that they may be available, but
yeah, that is kind of short notice, especially on a weekend. Michelle, was I the only one on the 11th? I don't remember that couldn't make it.
No, I think there were several, she said.
Yes, there were several.
Okay.
Ooh.
Michelle, was it 3 of us on the 16th?
Correct.
And I know it's kind of difficult because we don't know how many people we're interviewing. So the 16th is my baby's birthday. I might be able to bribe him to you know, because I'm so important, to deal without mommy for a few hours. If other people can be flexible on the 16th.
I hate to take you away from your baby for 4 hours, though.
That doesn't work for me at all.
It kind of sounds like we're going to have to go with our last resort. Because I think we've been going around and around looking for options.
Yeah, but then the challenge though is then when do we discuss who to bring to the final interview, and that nomination is the tricky part.
So here's the thing, right? Like I could like listen if you guys are comfortable with this. So here's the thought. Like I can so my oldest child has just turned 9. So I don't know how that works with closed session rules, because I'm going to tell you right now, like I can use headphones and stuff like that, but I will be around 3 small people. I'd be happy to like listen in and just like throw them in front of the TV and be like a terrible parent. I know I wouldn't be able to maintain the professionalism to actually like, participate in an interview. But if you are all comfortable with having kind of a creative solution, I can like listen in, make sure they go to, I'm sure by the time we're ready to talk, it'll be bedtime anyway. And I should be able to participate in the discussion, but and I'll take as good of notes as I can. I just might need to annoyingly ask some clarifying questions and things after the fact. Is everybody okay with? I know it's a little awkward, and I apologize for. It's just with COVID, I really don't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that.
We've done that before with an interview where somebody wasn't able to actively participate. They were in the car with their family on the way home, and they just had their device with their earbuds in. So we have done that in the past, as long as everyone else was comfortable with that.
Okay, so yeah, just full disclosure, I will be around other people, but I'll keep headphones in. That's
okay.
fine. But I mean, I'm just gonna also full disclosure, there are gonna be times when I'm gonna have to tune out for a minute and be like, hey, don't strangle your sister. So like again,
yeah.
I will take the best notes that I can. I love my kids at school, but I just if someone's committed to taking like super notes, I can tell you like, oh, I missed question whatever from whatever candidate. If you guys are all cool with that.
And I can still check with Rob and see if they can record that night, so then you can go back and rewatch if you feel like you may need to.
For sure. Yeah, I think if we could check on that would be great, because even if we could take like if we could recess like for 10 or 15 minutes between the interview completion and the debrief, that would give me time to go back and watch.
Okay.
Or something. So, but if we can't record it, that's fine. We'll figure it out as long as you guys are cool with that.
Yeah, and I keep forgetting that's that second night, so you won't have time to watch in between. I'm sorry. Okay, so does that sound like a good solution, everyone? We'll keep it on the 14th.
And then we're going to debrief for the 3?
Mm-hmm.
That right? Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. That brings us now to our closed session. I would like to. This is being recorded and put on YouTube right now. This is the last of the any decisions being made in open session. So we're going to go into closed session, and this would conclude with the televised part of the meeting. Anything that would happen after you come out of closed session would be the adjournment of the meeting. There won't be anything else happening. So then our IT people can put this on, get this on YouTube and finalized, and then can go home. So nothing else will happen outside of closed session other than the adjournment of the meeting. Board Member Anderson, if you have a question, is that old?
Yeah, it's old.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move that we convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.5, Parent 1, Parent C, relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibilities.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any other questions or discussion regarding the motion to go into closed session?
Can we have a 5-minute break after the vote?
Yes. Roll call vote, please.
Jacobs,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Delgado,
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
And then there is a different one to log into for the closed session.
All right, we are now in closed session. We'll see everybody in a couple minutes.
Thank you.